this was like a pre-planned thing. Like she had a mission when she came on the show, to all the way to the extent that she didn't even let him finish. She was like, "Oh yeah, I know the question. I have this memorized in my head. Let's see what she's gonna say, because I think this is gonna be cap."
On my happiness. I feel like women.
So stupid. That's so stupid.
Nothing of substance.
I just want to chase happiness.
Right.
That's where you go to your husband and be like, "Hey, babe, I feel like I'm not happy.
Right.
How can we work together so we can get me out of this slump?" You know?
Right. Because I think she's in a basically just in a rut.
Yeah.
In her life where she just needs to work through it. And I think her pulling the trigger on such a life-altering decision, like getting married is a life-altering decision, but getting divorced is another just life-altering decision, especially when you have kids involved.
Yeah.
I think she's going to regret this in a couple of years, because she can chase all the dopamine and all the happiness that she wants. But when things start falling apart in her family because of her decision, then she might regret it. And that's not to say that she will have issues, but if a young girl or young woman who's in her situation that doesn't have the benefit of the money, of the, fame and the network that she has, decides to do the same thing, it's probably going to fall apart and backfire against them. And so, not to say that this will backfire against her, but statistically it will. And a lot of older women are growing up and they're like, yeah, I should either stay to my marriage or I let somebody get away because I was just trying to be this independent woman, just chasing happiness and a career and all of this, that, and the third.
Tend to focus on everybody else's happiness, making sure that everybody else is okay, meaning our children. Meaning, our children, our friends, our, family. But
notice she's saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, I know.
It's like she's reading off of one of her scripts.
She's internalized it.
It's almost like she's playing one of her characters. Ooh. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's the exact same script. She's saying the same thing. And it's right out of the modern woman playbook in a sense, where it's like, no, this is what you need to say. And this is what you need to do. You just need to chase happiness, right? You don't need a man.
But this is like a popular thing. Like, me and my mom are watching the show. It's called Gracie and Frankie. And like one of the daughters, like she and her husband, they're in a slump. Mm-hmm. And she was talking to her sister and she's just like, I'm just not happy. Like, we don't even talk. We don't communicate, stuff like that. And her sister is like, well, why don't you just leave? Like, just leave so you can be happy. Like,
right.
Just you need to focus on yourself. And it's just like, no, that's a terrible way to go about that.
Right.
Especially like if nothing else is going on, like he's not cheating, he's not hitting her,
right?
Things like that.
And this is not to say that her husband was doing exactly what he needed to do or leading. We don't know because we're really only getting her side of the story.
Yeah.
And she's putting it out there publicly. So we're just commenting on the information that we have and trying to take away a valuable biblical and conservative lesson from it. So let's continue.
At the end of the day, it's about self-love. And when you start to really work on yourself, love yourself, know your value, know your worth, and then all of a sudden there's this awakening. Wow. And it's not easy.
What is this? Know your value, know your worth. Like, I don't understand that, because if people are being realistic, it doesn't make sense. So it's like, know your value, know your worth. Does that mean like I just put whatever price tag and sticker that I want on myself?
Okay, so
it just doesn't make sense.
So I think for the world standards, know your value, know your worth is equivalent to how people are like, I'm a 10, even though they're really like not a 10.
Right.
And I said like it was deceiving because it's like all these things like love yourself, all of that. When in reality, it's like you should know your worth according to how God sees you,
right? Rather
than, oh, I'm a 10 because I said I'm a 10 and da-da-da-da.
Right. It's like I love myself because, or I know my worth because I love myself, rather than I'm beautifully and wonderfully made. And before I was even formed in my mother's womb, you knit me together, and like, being grounded from the Creator, and then giving reverence because you were created and you have the ability to live. It's like, no, I make my life. I do this. I create stuff out of thin air. I manifest, like you said earlier. And I think that is grounds for an unhealthy society. And I think it's leading us to hell, literally.
Easy. It's a hard journey. But at the end of the day, I feel like it is so, so worth it. So,
Yeah, wow.
We shall find out now, shall we?
What I think, like, I mean, first of all,
We'll
you
see
could
10
hear
years
the
later.
people saying yes, and here, people at home are sitting thinking, like, I feel this.
Yeah.
Because marriage is hard,
it is. It takes a lot of work.
And it also takes a lot.
It's like encouraging people to
There it
get
is.
divorced, man.
Yeah, that's what I was. That's when I watched this earlier. I was like, it sounds like they're encouraging women to just step away from their relationships.
Step away from their families, their
The
relationship.
first sign of unhappiness, just
Oh,
run,
bye,
just
bye.
run, get out of there, take half his stuff and run. That's why men don't want to get married, and that's why you need to vet the woman you're with, and you need to make sure that she is in line with the game plan at all times, and y'all need to have meetings all the time. So we're on the same page all the time. And if I neglect that piece, then our goals and where we're going are going to start to drift and to the point where you're going to feel like, oh, I can just leave because we're not even going to the same place anyway. And so maybe that's something that we could possibly put on our husband there, where
Yeah.
he wasn't keeping the vision for their
For the family.
life and for where their family was trying to go. He wasn't being the provisioner in a strong enough manner to where she felt like, oh, we don't have the same vision. So I'm just going to chase my vision of what makes me happy rather than, stay in this marriage and, till death do us part. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I just think it's bad. It's bad for the kids because I know one thing that happened when my parents got divorced, and I knew they were going to get divorced, and I knew that they were going to live in separate houses well before they got divorced. It was just kind of an inevitable thing that was coming. And so, and I was in middle school, so I wasn't like super mature, but I was mature enough to, critically think about the impact that it was going to have. But it's different when you actually get into the situation where you have to go from house to house. And then if your parents actually disagree, then it's almost like you're choosing sides. But when you're all under one roof, you're able to work it out as a team, right? And now it almost makes you feel like you have to play for two different teams. And that's the unhealthiness that it brings. And that's why a lot of people are having daddy issues or mommy issues or just issues with identity, because if your parents are split and they're not on the same page, you have your mom saying this is good and your dad saying this is good, and there might be two things that are conflicting, and that's gonna, of course, that's gonna mess a kid up.
Yeah.
Need to be under one roof with one vision. I mean, same with just a nation, one nation under God. We're getting away from that. We're getting away from just the principles. I mean, even if you take the God thing away from it, just one solo mission as a country, we have all these different things, all these different agendas, and this agenda is yelling loud at one point, this agenda is yelling loud, and then they're fighting against each other. That's why we're having
so much discord.
Yeah, basically a bunch of mini civil wars. Like civil cold wars. That's what we're having.
Verbal civil war.
Let's continue.
Of guts to know when you need to change something.
Yes, it really does.
It takes a lot of courage to say this isn't working.
Yeah.
Was there a moment where you knew, like, I have to do something?
This is so irritating.
It takes a lot of courage for you to gut it out and stay.
Yeah.
Even when times are tough or you don't feel happy in your relationship. It takes a lot of courage to work through that. It doesn't necessarily take a lot of courage to run from the situation, especially if there's nothing egregious that happened or nothing that was a sin against you that happened. I mean, ultimately you're walking away because you just
want to.
Just want to, in a sense, right?
Yeah, they're over here massaging the woman's ego.
I promise you the grass may not be greener on the other side.
Different.
Yes.
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel
okay,
like
bother.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even today, I was over here trying to cook something. I needed to open a bottle. I was like, dang, I wish my man was here so he could open this bottle for me.
That's funny. Yeah, I've like, my mom asked me to open up stuff all the time. Just like, hey, I can't get it. Can you do this? Sure. I mean, because men are just naturally, on average, stronger. We have better grip strength. And so if something needs to be done around the house or something as simple as opening a jar, if you don't have somebody that could do it, it's like, what do? Do you go to your neighbor's house? Do you, it's like,
Just
yeah,
pray to God, help me,
yeah,
Lord.
yeah. Please open this kid jaw in the name of Jesus, the Father, the Son of this,
When I started
it's crazy.
to, again, like I said, focus on myself, but there was this sadness. And I knew that life is short. I had actually, lost my grandmother. We had lost Elena Housley, and both of them at the same time. There was just an aha moment in me where I said, you know what? You need to tap in, see what's really going on with your happiness. Life is short. Let's go. Let's start working
See, in
on
those
you and
moments,
really
you're
focusing
supposed to
on
seek God
what really, really
in
matters.
those moments. You're supposed to turn to the Bible in those moments because that's what's going to ground you and ground you and keep you sane.
Well, yeah, and your partner, like your
Yeah,
marriage partner,
yeah,
God
of
and your
course.
marriage partner, and perhaps that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a reason. We don't really know details, but the way she's describing it is not grounds for leaving your marriage because an atrocity happened or a tragedy happened um, in your life. Because things like we all know one thing, that we're going to die.
Yes.
And
It's
so,
inevitable.
I mean, people die tragically, people die unexpectedly all the time, and it's hard to cope with that. But at the end of the day, we have to, again, go to God, and pray our way through it, rely on the people around us. And it almost sounds like she did that, and she was just like, but I'm still sad and I'm unhappy, so what do I need to do next? Oh, this might be a thrilling thing that I could do. I could just be single, right? I got married young. I didn't really get to have my single life. You know
Which
what I
is
mean?
kind of like,
And so I almost think that's the direction that she's headed. That's kind of
probably.
what it sounds like.
But it's just like, just based off her career, it's
Mhm.
like, what do you mean you want to be single? Like, you got to do all this cool stuff and you were married at the same time.
You had
Like,
somebody there supporting you, but also the roles that she played. It was a lot of independent woman roles.
Yeah, it was.
All the way up.
It
Well,
was.
actually, her last role was actually a wholesome role in Family Reunion on Netflix. So, I mean, she's played both, but definitely in one of her biggest roles, which was Melanie on The Game.
Yep.
That was all about being an
I'm
independent
going to
woman.
med school.
Yeah, a med school, don't need a man, but then I do need a man, and she ends up with a man. And so at the end of the day, she does get that union, but you could tell it always
It's like,
created tension,
yeah.
and that's what created the the thrill of the show, was because there was always that tension and that drama between trying to be an independent woman and this guy chasing his career and trying to work out the two. I mean, it's not that you can't have two career people, but you also have to understand, like, what are your roles in your marriage and how do we stick to them to go forward in it.
Here, which is at the end of the day, your peace, your joy, and your happiness. So I would say that. And I was in therapy as well.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of therapy. So it was all of that, together that gave.
So I was in therapy, and therapy told me that I needed to go chase my happiness and leave my marriage. Don't go to therapy.
Unless it's truly a Christian therapist, that's all.
I mean, I used to be a big advocate for therapy, and I think I like the idea of therapy and when therapy's done right. But Jordan Peterson alludes to this all the time, is most therapists aren't, they're being like life coaches and giving advice now, where when the job of a therapist is, or a psychologist rather, is to sit there and listen and kind
Yeah.
of guide the person to critically think about their situation to come to a conclusion rather than giving them solutions. And if everybody's coming to the same solution, that we need to chase happiness, but people are, more unhappy than statistically they've ever been, then, I mean, something's got to give. Something's not adding up, right?
Gave me that, aha moment.
What were you the most afraid of stepping in? Because you're stepping in. Because some people, when you say, "Oh, my husband and I are going our separate ways," they go, "Oh no, oh that's sad." But you actually see this as
a celebration.
A celebration.
I really do. I look at it as
It's not a celebration. You're taking that kid's father away from them because they got to live with somebody.
It's most likely going to be you.
One of my friends,
even if it is like co-parenting situation. Still,
yeah, I mean, I'm telling you from experience, that ain't it. Like, I'd rather have had both my parents in the house. I knew if that happened, I mean, there would be, a bunch of civil discord. So I thank God that, they were able to part ways. But ideally, I wish my back half of my childhood was like the first half, where everything seemed like a happy family. You know what I mean? Even if there wasn't. So let's proceed.
Beautiful letter to me from a woman who got a divorce, and it's all about this perspective, in my opinion, and just changing the narrative. My marriage was a success.
Yeah,
I look at it as like a curriculum.
Your marriage was not a success if you got divorced. Hold on. Before she continues, we're going to get into this. Marriage is forever. Matthew 19:46. Can you go ahead and read it?
And he answered and said to them, "Have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate."
Let no man separate. You can't leave.
One flesh.
You're one flesh. You just separated. And also, so we can look at it this way. If you really got married under God and then you got divorced, you weren't really one flesh. Like that marriage wasn't really under God. Because what God has joined together, no man can truly separate. Actually, no, that's a bad interpretation of it. Because it says, let no man separate, which means that men can separate it. But if it was truly joined together than God, you need to stay together. And so the fact that she's saying her marriage is a success, even though she left it, that's blasphemy. And two, it's just her way of trying to justify her
I feel like
leaving the family. Necessarily leaving the family, but splitting up the family.
I think she's just trying to make herself feel better.
Well, yeah.
About the whole situation.
And she said, you got to change the narrative. Stories are powerful. Yeah. The stories that you tell yourself about yourself and about like your world are the most powerful things. But you can also tell delusional stories and lies. And that's what she's doing right now.
And it doesn't help that there's women out there, even like the people on the show, like congratulating her and like making it seem like, oh, this is a great thing for you.
Right. That's like saying I lost the game, but it was a success because like if you look at it this way, I didn't lose by that much. It's like, no, like you lost the game. Like
do better next time.
Hit the showers and go think about what you've done. It's crazy.
You're learning, you're growing, you're evolving, you're creating. And I was able to create with Corey some beautiful, amazing children. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at the end of that curriculum, and at the end, there's a graduation, there's a celebration.
What's the graduation?
That's basically, how I'm.
Yeah. Hold up.
Stop the kid.
Yeah, what's the graduation?
What's the graduation?
Yeah. So at the end of it, what you just
dip out?
The graduation. Oh, I'm just going to leave my marriage. I'm done.
I'm looking at it now. And I feel like people when they look at marriage, that success equals longevity. But no, at the end of the day, it's, are they happy? Are they thriving? Are they?
I mean, yeah, I think that plays a role, but like the longevity part is the whole part of marriage. Marriage is forever.
Well, the reason that it's not a success is because in almost every single marriage, and I imagine her vows were similar to everybody else's, it's like essentially death do us part. I'm going to be there forever by your side. And then by her leaving, she's breaking her vows. So that can't be a success unless you're just a liar. You're basically just lying and saying, or in breaking your vows and saying that, yeah, I know I said that we were going to be together forever and that I was going to be by your side forever in sickness and in health, but I'm unhappy.
I'm not happy anymore. So
it's crazy. It
you're on your
can't be
own.
a success. I'm graduating to my happiness. Let that sink in. Just let that sink in.
Growing, and I feel like that is what is most important. It's not about staying in something because however long you are in that situation, that equals success. It's about really, again, are you happy? Because life is really short.
Yes, life is short. And you're going
We
to
know
realize,
that.
you're going to realize it's better to do it with
Someone than alone.
right. And now she does say that they're still close with her ex-husband, which doesn't make much sense. It's like, well, if you're still close with him, why aren't you married? And the
Yeah.
only explanation is she just wants to do what she wants to do
Yeah.
without feeling guilty about being married. And so it's a very selfish act that she did. And she's saying that she's doing it for self-love. Selfish. She's self-happiness. That's selfish. Right? It's just like, yeah, I do selfless things for everybody else, but now it's time for me to stop that and be happy. And that's something that you should never do if you are, especially if you're a woman, don't take this example. And if you're a man, remember to vet your women and also make sure that you're sacrificing in your relationships as Christ would for the church. And you shouldn't have any more issues.
But you and your husband, like a lot of couples.
You like that? You like that?